Have you covered the Nina Turner Libertarian Party thing? I don't really feel like there's that much to cover. So basically, Nina Turner was like, I think it would be nice if people didn't all die of cancer all the time, and if people could get Band-Aids when they scratch their knees. And the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire Twitter account responded by saying, well, I think you should pick cotton for free then, you fucking black woman, you former slave, you piece of shit. I'm not going to do stuff for free. That's slavery. Band-Aids? You want Band-Aids? Well, you know who else wanted Band-Aids? Slave owners. Yeah. That's what they said. That's what they said. I don't think there's much to go over because the New Hampshire Libertarian Twitter account is a Nazi account. They're Nazis. They've dog whistled in that direction before. The Mises group is one of the big like political activist and fundraising groups that control the Libertarian Party, and they are basically just a Nazi party. Their goal for decades has been to move things away from any semblance of libertarianism and explicitly towards just like that like special kind of ANCAP Nazism where they're incredibly offended by government intervention in anything that in any way helps minorities. But they're also in favor of government intervention when it comes to anything that suppresses them. So it's basically just a way to get people on board with extremist reactionary politics without having to explicitly own it. Libertarians do this all the time. Remember the Libertarian presidential candidate that I debated like a month ago or something? And my opening bit was like, yeah, well, you know, a lot of libertarians want to get rid of the civil rights movement, and they want to do so explicitly because the deregulation pathway is just, to them, the easiest way to get to reducing minority rights. And he was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about that one, sonny boy, but I mean, I do want to get rid of the Civil Rights Act. Like, yeah, he was one of those guys. He was one of the Mises group people. I even called him up by name to him, and he responded, and he was like, well, I don't know what you about this or that, but I've worked with the Mises group. Yeah, their goal is just like social conservatism through libertarianism. It's not even libertarianism. On the subject of racism, hot topic these days, I know, the new set of teaching standards in Florida includes saying that African Americans received some personal benefit from slavery. This was backed unanimously by the State Board of Education. You might remember that initially, the Board of Education fought back against Ron DeSantis a bit when it came to some of the stuff that he would try to push, but they've since fallen completely in line. They weren't exactly an activist organization to begin with, and now they basically seem to understand that their goal here is just to agree with whatever DeSantis puts on them. So that's cool. Florida education officials approve new standards for teaching African American history in response to the, quote, anti-woke policies touted by the governor. As critics urge the state to rethink the curriculum, claiming that it, quote, only presents half the story and half the truth. Nice. The new standards, backed unanimously by the State Board of Education, encompass the controversial 2022 law. Hey, just so we can have this timed out really well, can somebody find, I think it's the first audio log that you find from Comstock in BioShock Infinite, the one where he talks about being patrons to the black man. If somebody could find that audio clip on YouTube, I would appreciate it very much. Board members and state officials defended the updated curriculum by saying they touched on the darkest parts of U.S. history against charges by opponents, including the state's largest teacher union, that the changes are attempts to whitewash what students are learning. Some of the issues raised surrounded standards that include instruction on, quote, how slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit. The actual argument they're making is, well, these slaves did learn how to pick crops, so that's a skill. So it's kind of like an unpaid internship, you know? And we have those today, so that's literally it, yeah. And lessons that touch on acts of violence perpetuated, quote, against and by African Americans. Fantastic. Thank you very much, chat. Let me just play this out loud real quick.
What exactly was the great emancipator emancipating the Negro from? From his daily bread, from the nobility of honest work, from wealthy patrons who sponsored them from cradle to grave, from clothing and shelter. And what have they done with their freedom? Why, go to Finkton and you shall find out. No animal is born free, except the white man. And it is our burden to care for the rest of creation.
So that's unironically what they're teaching, basically. It's the white man's burden. The idea that, okay, so yeah, slavery happened, sure. But think of all the violence African Americans committed against the white man. Think of all the skills the slaves developed as they toiled on the fields. That's what they're saying. That's literally the argument that they're making. I mean, so to be clear, like, you could make this exact same argument about Holocaust victims. Jews did attack Nazi officials in Nazi Germany, obviously. I don't know why they wouldn't. And there were activities that people in the death camps would do before they were killed, developed skills which in some instances, if they weren't killed in the gas chambers, could be applied for their personal benefit. That's, I mean, these caveats apply equally to Holocaust victims. You understand this, correct? That's the level they're on right there. That's what's going on over there. That's the level they're on. There's a lot more to this, too. That's just the most egregious and straightforward example of racism in this curriculum. The article goes into more detailed and nuanced examples. We'll see how it goes. The courts are going to challenge a lot of these, but frankly, there's only so much the courts can really do when it comes to educational curriculum, because it's such a it's such an opaque and difficult to enforce system. It's not easy to get like a full understanding of what's being said or how it's being applied, you know? But hey, a lot of states in the Union still teach the lost cause myth. So, you know, it's not exactly new here in America. Oh, that's right. This was the tweet from the New Hampshire Libertarian Party Twitter account. People have a right to free insulin. People have a right to free cotton. There you go. That's the tweet. That's the tweet from them. That's Nina Turner, and that's Leonardo DiCaprio. In real life, he's not acting here. This is just what he does. But cotton was never free. Yeah, the funny thing is that in his argument, the comparison would be like, oh, so people got cotton for free during the slave days? No. You had to buy it. What the fuck are you talking about? It's a common libertarian argument, and it's a good way. It's kind of like an IQ detector, where they'll argue that the government providing anything is slavery because you're forcing people to work, which is not how anything works. If you work for the government, and the government says, okay, as a doctor who works for the government, it's your job to provide these services. You know what you can do if you don't want to do your job description is you can quit your job. The same is the case for corporations. Like, you can quit. You can just quit. You can just quit your job, but it's called having a job description. It's just being expected to do certain work. That's it. That's it. Being a libertarian is kind of an IQ detector. Yeah, it is. They're also saying she should have been deported. Oh, yes. So, okay, yeah. So, real, like, Hitler vibes from the New Hampshire Libertarian Party here. We'll pay for Nina Turner to be flown to the country of her ancestors, as well as 1 year of that country's average income conditional on surrendering U.S. citizenship. Otherwise, she should shut up about reparations forever. So literally, like, oh, Blackie, get out of here, you know, like, oh, go back to Africa. Literally, that's what they're saying. Yeah, she's already in the country of her ancestors. I guarantee you, if you take the, like, pasty white fucks who run the Libertarian Party account, and you trace back their lineage, they probably came here from Europe sometime in the past 200 years, which is probably not the case with Nina Turner. Oh, another one. If a libertarian ever is anti-immigration or in favor of deportation, they instantly cede any argument for them being a libertarian. How can you possibly be a libertarian and be anti-government when one of the enforcement mechanisms for society that you're comfortable with is invisible lines in the sand where the government gets to decide whether or not you live there based on ancestry? You aren't owed shit for what your ancestors did. How about spreading a message encouraging blacks to take personal responsibility instead of blaming others? You and people who spread messages like yours directly create more black poverty. It's a Nazi account. It's just a Nazi account. That's it. Though it is worth noting that the arguments made by Nazis and the arguments made by conservatives broadly are really not like that different. There's not a huge difference between them. Not to mention the repeal the Civil Rights Act tweet. Well, yeah. Here's the National Libertarian Party not disagreeing with the New Hampshire Libertarian Party. Yeah, again, it's like an IQ check. Hi, Nina. Glad you asked. None of these things you advocate for are free. They require labor and materials which need to be compensated for. Otherwise, you're arguing for slavery. Hopes this helps. Yes, the government would compensate for it. They're free at point of purchase. The government would compensate. This is literally like a 5-year-old's understanding of economics. Like it's actually, but you have to be like mentally 5 to be a libertarian. So that's the bit. This is what politics is. This is what we have to deal with. Anyway, the mainstream Libertarian Party really can't disagree that much with the Mises Institute at this point because they represent, I think, the largest amount of money present. Revenue, 4.2 million. Expenses, 4.16 million. Founders, Murray Rothbard. Yeah. I think they're the most influential bloc within the Libertarian Party.